One of my favorite spots.
Okay,
Oh,
welcome to our Bucky call this morning. It's after the 4th of July. It's the 5th of July. And good to be here. Susan, welcome back from your travels. How are you feeling today, and what do you expect out of today's call?
Oh, I'm excited to be with you gentlemen and re-engage my brain in this very particular way. So I expect that I'll just get back on the trail of connection. And Manu, how are you feeling, and what would you like to get out of today?
I feel good. First, I hope you had a fantastic 4th of July, everybody there in the US.
Thank you.
And I wish you wisdom, patience. All right. Anyway, I feel good, as I said, and I feel grateful to be here and being helped. I also feel grateful that everybody's there and then ready to exchange. What I expect is for us to continue on what we discussed last week, amplitude, and see how, we can elevate our thought the largest possible in order to have an eagle sight of things, in order to focus better and to achieve better in terms of what we do in the environment and the local place where we are. So that's my expectation. So that of practicality in our discussion, always landing to something that is useful to our thought, that is useful to what we do. So Wayne, how do you feel? What do you expect?
I feel grateful this morning for all of you, sincerely. A lot of things have been going on, but yesterday particularly, I had a conversation with a friend and his girlfriend who is new to me. And as we were discussing various things, she started talking about space and is space empty or is there something out there? And both of them had profuse and rather strong opinions about that. And I listened. And I offered a couple of thoughts that weren't really well received. Not that I cared if they were received well, but my experience was that they came back with more of a debating, argumentative stance. And I noticed how quickly I lost interest in the conversation. And I thought of each of you and how grateful I am for the depth that we go to and for the layer upon layer upon layer of understanding and knowledge and vision that I now have of how the universe is put together and how it works and how functional that becomes at some level. I just feel such incredible peace in where I am in this moment. I'm not saying I have the answers and they don't. I'm saying that I'm really comfortable with those answers I feel like I have and how I see it at this moment. I realize it's so much about perception and that I could change that perception with some new piece of knowledge or information and shift in a heartbeat to a whole new vision of it. So thanks for all of the tutoring. Thanks for all the contributions. Thanks for the conversations and the discussions and for stretching my thinking every week. I surely am not where I was 12 years ago or whatever it was when we started these conversations. And I owe a lot of that to all of you. So my expectation this morning is that I will sit here and wait for a wave. And when I see it coming, I'll try to get up on my surfboard and ride it. And I hope we're all riding together and screaming happy jubilation as we go through it. Mark, I love the spot you're on this morning. I can see through my mind's eye your front yard and the lawn and the street and the hillside across and yeah, there's the morning sunrise colors. It's beautiful. Thank you. That actually good. Thanks, Mark. How are you feeling this morning? What's
I feel good. And I hope to just add to my perspective and knowledge to watch how it changes and adds to the fractal of this experience that I'm stuck in called life.
okay. All right, pass it on, please.
Richard, how are you feeling today, and what do you expect to get out of today?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm coming off of our Canada Day celebrations on Saturday. So it's sort of an interesting 3 or 4 days that kind of overlap or coincide with US Independence Day and July 4th and so forth. And when you mentioned Tuscany, I think I've got the right location, but it reminds me of my connection to the Perry Center in Italy, and where David Peat set up a sort of a tribute retreat center for the works of David Bohm, and they're carrying that on now, and I have a nice connection with them. It also, this is the beginning week here in Calgary for our famous Calgary Stampede, which has sort of mixed feelings about it because it also typifies to some extent the Wild West in North America, and the Wild West in North America also means that there's a certain amount of colonization issues that have to do with the stewardship of our great lands and the First Nations people that were here. And I pay tribute today really to one of the First Nations people who died a couple of months ago. I didn't know about it. She was a colleague in my social work profession, but she was also one of the principal people that helped David Peat and David Bohm get connected with the Blackfeet people in southern Alberta, and allowed David Peat to eventually write the book Blackfoot Physics. So it's a day of thinking about her and remembering her connection to the dialogue kind of focus of what we're all about. And I certainly appreciate what Wayne was saying in the sense of how debate and argument and discussion often steers away from the kind of dialogue that I think we all appreciate and enjoy and learn from in this session. So feeling pretty good, and I hope to get just more of that out. So Susan, no, we're gone to you. Must be over to Stephen.
Yeah, it is over to me. And today, oh, there we go. Okay, good. Hey, Mark, Wayne, you must be on as guest user.
I must be on what?
You must be on as guest user. Is that correct?
I guess, Steve, it got messed up, remember? Made me log back in and
Yeah, it says Zoom user. So I just made you a co-host just now, I think. And I'm let me see, did I make you a co-host? Yeah, I think I did. So you are now, yeah, I can, so you're now a co-host in the event that I fade away. Okay, I moved. I came out of my cave, and I'm living downtown Salt Lake City.
Wow.
And
that's
wow,
your balcony? Wow.
that's my balcony.
Dang, dude. I'll have to come see
Oh
that.
my gosh, it's like freaking amazing over here.
I'll bet.
And it's like a first class hotel. I've got air conditioning. I've got 3 windows in my bedroom, and before I had one bedroom in one window in my whole apartment. It was like a 6-inch slit, and I had to look up, and I could tell if the sun was shining. I couldn't tell if it was a blue sky or a cloudy sky. And wow, I'm having an amazing time. And I moved in last Friday and haven't got internet yet here still. So I've been using my hotspot to watch movies, casting them onto my television. And so I'm down on energy. And so I think I can get my my computer on and share my screen, but I'm not sure how much wattage I have left. And suddenly I go away, Wayne's going to take over and finish off the call. I think I'll be able to stay on my phone one way or another. So I've had an amazing weekend. It was July 4th weekend. I've had coming out of my cave, literally, it's been, I've had to worry about where do I put my toothbrush because I have so much space here. My bedroom in this place is as big as my entire room was in down in my basement. And wow, I moved some 50 boxes. And my kids came in on Friday. They were just amazing. My one son-in-law said, "Hey, I'm renting a truck. We're not gonna load our pickups 3 or 4 times. And he rented a U-Haul, and we filled the dadgum U-Haul, and still had to put stuff in trucks, and then unloaded it Friday afternoon, and we got it done Friday. And then I've been trying to move boxes around all weekend. And this weekend, because it's been kind of like the 4th of July weekend, and I've been with family and stuff, I'm just amazed at the miracle of life. I'm just amazed. And the topics we've been talking about, this Donald Hoffman conversation about what is consciousness and the amplitude-hedron and the miracle of perception, and how human perception has absolutely no freaking bearing on reality. That all of perception, quarks, atoms, thoughts, history, dreams, the future, are all artifacts of human perception and have absolutely no bearing on the nature of reality. As I ponder that, the only outcome, it's amazing to hear Donald Hoffman. I found another video. I've been watching videos on this. He comes up with an absolutely reverence towards all life, trees and plants, everything that's alive, for DNA and RNA, the miracle of it all. And I've just been overwhelmed with that. And I've sat with my kids. I was able to, my great-grandson and my granddaughter came over to the house yesterday with my other daughter. And my great-grandson is 12 years old. And I have a grandson who's 10 years old, and they are really good buddies. And it's really good because my great-grandson has been through pretty much hell. His dad overdosed on drugs. They never got married. My daughter has pulled herself out of a giant black hole and just made decision after decision, bold and brave decision, to pull herself out of Minnesota to bring herself here. I do want to acknowledge, and I do this not very often, but I spent probably, I flew her out here, her and her kid and her husband, with my frequent flyer miles. I had enough miles to go to Egypt and back, and maybe I think go to Egypt twice, and I was planning on doing that. But when my daughter was willing to come out here to Utah to be with this part of the family instead of with her family and come out of that mess, I mean, those are crazy people. And she decided to do that. She's such a hero. And she's making over 100 grand a year, working at Google right now. She was working with another internet company, and she broke away from Armando. That's a big, long story. Armando Montalongo is kind of like a Kiyosaki, and got his own little empire, started becoming his own little thing, and went off in a freaking tangent, and she almost got sucked into that. He was chasing her. And it's, that kind of, he owned a Lamborghini and a bunch of other crap, and it's really tough when you're, I don't know. She's made such amazing decisions, and the miracle of life this weekend, the miracle of life, the miracle of my great-grandson, the miracle of being able to ponder it, the miracle of having a memory of being alive. Wow. I've been thinking about, when you talked about being in conversation with people, most people are so boring. I mean, they're so concerned about You know, one of the pictures with Donald Hoffman showed the monkeys in 2001 throwing rocks at the monolith. You know, they knew there was something exciting about that monolith. They knew it was weird, but they had no freaking idea what it was, and all they could do was throw rocks at it. And I see a lot of human beings just throwing rocks at each other, not even engaged in the miracle of life. Richard, you're sharing. Do you know that I have that book, Iroquois Physics, or Blackfeet Physics, on my shelf, and I knew about David Bohm. And as soon as you said Pete, I knew that Pete was associated with Bohm. And then to find out that Pete is the person who wrote that book, which is on my shelf, I'm gonna have to take another look at that book. You know, I like to tell stories about how Native Americans knew more about physics than most white guys do, you know. And it's the miracle of life. It's just so amazing. And being able to hang out with you guys, wow, I'm starting to get really emotional right at this moment. So thank you for being who you are. Thank you for just lifting your eyes up and being willing to look around and see what's out there. I told my kids yesterday, I said, you know, I've been in a cave, but I hang out with geniuses. You know, I hang out with this group, but I hang out with David Bohm, and I hang out with Donald Hoffman, and I hang out with Eric Weinstein, and I hang out with Lex Friedman, and I hang out with some amazing people. And I'm so grateful for you guys being in my life and for being able to just do this little rant and have some idea that you'll have some idea what the hell I'm talking about. So anyway, I'm glad to be here. And I have a great topic today of things to talk about. I wanted to show a video. But maybe I can bring maybe I'll go ahead and bring I'm gonna have to load up my hotspot and bring my computer online. And while I do that, maybe we can chat for just a second. Anybody else have any thoughts about last week and what was going on? I see some comments in the thing while I'm loading my computer up. Let's see any comments right now. Let's make some of those chat things verbal. If you will.
In Manu's comment, boundary enables space. That was a big thing for me last week when we talked about what's it called, Manu? You mentioned it up front. The structure of
amplitude-hedron.
Amplitude-hedron. And one of the flashes of, I think, inspiration that came to me as I looked at that thing was the fact that it forms a container, and that were it not for the boundary that forms that container, life as we know it wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be able to apprehend it or perceive it or make choices within that space. So I really get how important, at least at some level, I'm getting how important boundaries enabling space are. And I appreciate that comment, Manu.
Well, I'm seeing show networks here. And I don't see oh, there it is, Galaxy Note 10. Okay, good. And I'm now connecting, so life is good. And so now I got to come on to Zoom. I'm so sorry for being unprepared today. Any other comments? That's a good one. Susan, do you know what the amplitude-hedron is? Why am I not hearing Susan?
She's muted.
Oh, okay.
I think she's busy for a minute. She took herself off video too.
Okay, cool. It looks like I'm not sure my computer's going to connect to my hotspot. And like I said, I'm not sure what's going on. I do believe it's funny because I have dimensions of shapes. I have a link right here. Maybe let me just, I won't be able to get on the link. Please try again. Zoom will not connect on my computer. And let's see if I can get on the internet with this link here. Open And then I'll tell you the name of it. And that would be what my share was. What if this is how you multiply a square times a circle? Have you guys heard about multiplying shapes before? It's like the ultimate topology conversation. I'm feeling really unable to connect. I wonder if I really am sorry for this. Yeah, no internet. Yeah, I think I've hit the limit of my network status.
Well, at least you're still with us.
Yeah, at least I'm still with you, wasting your time, and I apologize. Can't read internet.
Hey, I'm gonna throw a curveball out, Steve, and bail you out here.
No, go ahead, go for it. I'm gonna
Well, I
be
had-
in silent mode.
I'm going to call upon the chemists of the group. Anybody with chemical background. I learned something really fun yesterday. And that is that hydrogen atoms bond metals in water in liquid form. And there's a way to release those, and I didn't know that. And what do you know about that? Anybody know anything about that? You'd know something about hydrogen. Madhu, you must know a lot about it as a chemical engineer. Or are you a geo engineer? What is your exact degree besides real estate? Manu?
Me,
Yeah, you.
no degree.
You don't have a degree?
I thought you were a geologist.
No, seriously?
Oh,
You want to know?
What is
I have 3 degrees. I don't like to talk about it, to be truthful.
even with us, Manu? Come on.
Okay, so I have 3 degrees. I have a master of what they used to call electromechanical engineering.
There you go.
I have a master of petroleum, and I have a master of economics.
Economic,
Okay.
petroleum, and electrochemical.
Electromechanical, yeah.
Electro.
But I work mechanical.
electro-
But I work for more than 25 years in oil, in exploration.
Right, right.
And I used to lead multidisciplinary teams of geophysicists, geologists, reservoir engineers, all of these people in multidisciplinary exploration of oil. So that's where I got my understanding of geology.
Okay. What is geomechanical engineering? The mechanics of the
Yeah,
earth.
geomechanical has to do with rocks.
So it's the mechanics of the structure of the earth.
Yes.
Okay. The
So
cro-
in application of that, you get geotechnicians.
Okay.
Yes. But geology is the study of formation of all rocks in general,
Mm-hmm.
and the study of their transformation under pressure, temperature, and erosion.
Mm-hmm. But see, that is really germane to my conversation, because one of the things I've long been fascinated about in my part of the world is the ancient Lake Bonneville. Lake Bonneville was an inland ocean that was trapped in what they call the Great Basin of Utah and Nevada, probably by the upthrust of the San Andreas and the formation of the Sierra Nevadas and some of the mountain ranges between the Rockies and the coast. So part of the ocean got cut off and was trapped inland, and it was massive. It covered most of these states in its heyday.
Yeah.
I thought it just gradually dried up and became the Salton Sea and the Great Salt Lake, but that's not what happened. There was a cataclysmic failure of a natural earthen dam in Idaho that released all of those millions of acre feet of water in Lake Bonneville all at once.
Yeah.
I had driven through Idaho and Oregon and seen, many sections of the Snake River, and I could never figure out visually how wind could have cut that river channel. It just didn't make any sense to me. It didn't look like the Grand Canyon or other areas where you had sandstone and wind formations. And I found out that that channel was cut in a matter of a day or two by the release of that water. And it cut the channel all the way out to the Columbia and then recut and widened the Columbia all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Can you imagine observing something like that? That much power released? I mean, that must have been a frightening moment on Earth. So then there was this puddle left, and that's what shrunk down over time to become the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah.
And a lot of other, if you look at Salt Lake Valley, Susan, you'll get a kick out of this next time you're here. Maybe you've already seen it or someone's pointed it out to you, but if you stand like at your daughter's house and you look at the East Mountains, you'll notice about 20%, 15 to 20% up the height of the mountain, there's a sandbar.
Yeah.
You can see the bench. We call it the bench. That was the beach of Lake Bonneville. So imagine all of that water. You talk about erosion, Manu, sloshing around with wind and weather and whatever action and eroding these mountains all through Utah, Nevada. What do we know now exists in all of these mountains? Minerals, precious metals, silver, gold, all of that is here in abundance. And so it sloshed around and eroded a bunch of that, and it became minute particulate suspended in the water. There's a place at the south end of Salt Lake County where we call it the point of the mountain, where the Ochre Mountain range comes around the valley into the valley from the west, and the Wasatch Mountain range comes into the valley from the east. It forms a narrow opening where the Jordan River runs through between Utah Lake and the Great Salt Lake. And all of our gravel pits are right there. We've been mining silicon sand at that location since the beginning of the computer industry. And what I've come to understand, there's a big layer of black sediment deep down in those gravel pits that has gold in it. We actually processed some of that years ago and got gold out of that black sediment because as the volume of water was trying to drain out into what they called Utah Bay or whatever it was called down there, down in Utah County. As it was draining out, it slowed down. And so all of that suspended mineral deposit settled at that location and formed that layer of black, rich mineral soil. So it's really fascinating to me that it's been here all this time. And it looks like we're just getting to the point in our understanding of chemistry that we might begin to understand how to release some of that from the bonded structures that it became through those processes that you're describing. That's fascinating to me.
It would be nice if we could do it without using mercury as a catalyst.
No
Because when I
mercury,
watch-
no mercury that I'm using.
When I watch my mining shows, which is one of my guilty pleasures, like I can't explain this, they'll go out and see that these small time miners, once they've extracted the ore, they'll use the mercury to purify it. And so that's a big concern in terms of toxicity to local populations if what you're trying to get to is pure gold.
Yeah,
So
mercury, arsenic.
arsenic. Yeah, so at one time, Wayne, I remember you were working with some people. Not only did, and I think this is what in my brain, small cartoon here, the thing that got you in trouble with the government was that you had an interest in a mine, and then you started working with people who were better at chemically extracting gold from tailings.
We were working on a project. That isn't at all what got me in trouble with the government. It was the government itself, but no, there was no problem with that. And it was never an issue in the litigation.
No, I understand it was never spoken to, but I think one of the reasons you came up on radar.
That made, and if anything, it would probably enhance their interest in us because from a certain angle, that could have looked like some kind of a scam, even though it wasn't, and it never did reach that level.
I think it sounds dangerous.
Dangerous.
If you're the government,
It sounds dangerous if people what?
can extract more gold and mint their own damn coins.
Oh, yeah, my mint was maybe of interest to them. We were definitely doing that, not distracted. We were minting coins. Yes, Manu.
It was a very, very interesting conversation that you are starting with. If we bring it back to what we've been talking about here. First, when you talk about the whole of that radiative dispersion of things, right?
Say that
Explosion,
again.
fault. You talk about the radiative dispersion of concentrations.
Relative.
Radiative.
I'm not understanding it.
Okay, you talk about the whole of these things
I'm not
that
understanding.
were, you talk about faults, you talk about all these things that were dispersed or that flow away from a whole because of that dynamics, geological dynamics.
Okay, hold on
of-
just a second. I get that part of the conversation. What was the word, Susan?
Radiative.
Radiative.
Radiate.
Okay, yeah. One cause on top of another and all the interactions. Got it. Go ahead,
Yes.
please.
Now, once you have that, now the quest that you're looking for in terms of research, and I come to oil or hydrocarbon in general, when you are looking for it, you are looking at least for 4 factors fundamental. One is that there got to be a source. That is organic matter that decompose on the pressure and temperature to become, you talk about hydrogen, combining with carbon in a certain manner. In general, in the form of Cn, N being an index, H2N plus 2. That's the formula of hydrocarbon. For example, you talk about methane. Methane is CH4. 1 carbon, 4 oxygen.
Or hydrogen.
4 hydrogen.
Or hydrogen. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And then you can go, butane, propane, and all
Right.
of this get complicated. It is a chain.
Right.
So when you are looking at it, you look to localize where the source is. And since it's moving, you look at seeing where the reservoir is. Reservoir is something that got to be porous for it to fill it.
Where the reservoir is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the third is that you got to have a seal, something that bounds it. Since hydrocarbon are always moving upward to water, because lighter than water, you need something that is like a dome or whatever, or a fault of that put, a non, like shale against sand.
A lid on the container.
Yes, yes. And then the fourth thing that is important is preservation, because you can have that working at one point, but because of the tectonics of the environment, there's a breach. Or because of erosion, there's a breach, and the hydrocarbon will kind of evaporate or go away. So with that, you have 4 risks that are all independent risks, meaning exponential. And you have to multiply that. So if you start with an element that was 4, that was 80%, that is pretty certain, each of those factors. When you have 80% to the power of 4, you see what it means? It takes you to 10%.
Oh, reducing 80% to the power of 4. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So what you are looking for and what you're trying to build in application of the things that you are saying is the tension, integrity of your structure as it was formed over time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's That is the importance of it. And then if you learn it properly, then you can apply it to many, many other things. And that's where the principle, the structure, and the logic of what you use is something that can be transposed to other things. If I look at what Richard does all the time, we're building structures, and those structures, social structures, I mean, and they're dissolving all the time. And the
Right.
most difficult thing to do is not only to trace when he's helping somebody out of the doldrums of a situation, or when we want to build for the future, how to preserve those things, how to preserve that integrity that is always under the influence of this expanding, division expansion of the whole. And
I
I
have a
thought,
Before we go
yes,
further, go back to 80% to the power of 4 ends up being 10. My brain says it should be 5. Help me.
maybe I just say it's not correct. I just say it to say that it's very small in comparison
We're
to
reducing.
the one-dimensional thing that you had.
Here's what I'm thinking. Tell me if it's wrong. If we're reducing and we start with 80%, then there's 20% left. And we're going to divide that 4 times, are we not? Doesn't that leave me at 5?
Maybe I didn't say it well. What we are interested in is the stable convex volume of something. And this volume here is the tetrahedron with four apexes. One is the reservoir, second is one is the source, second reservoir, third is a seal, and fourth is a migration.
Okay.
Right?
So what's
What
the,
I call preservation.
what's the 80% conversation?
Yes. So if you take each of those occurring with a chance of 80%, and that chance has to concur to make your stable what you are looking for, the chance of finding it is very small.
Yeah, because it has to happen simultaneously in 4 areas.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So
The probability is divided by the exponential of the 4.
well, yes, it's a multiplicative stuff, and it makes it smaller and smaller since we're less than 1. So what is important to me here is to understand and adapt, to understand what is the process for it, and be able to transpose that this was a physical work, to transpose it into many, many situations in order to help me solve problems. Yes, Richard?
Well, just a little bit of a background here. It's kind of interesting. Wayne asked about anybody know anything about chemistry, which I don't really know anything about chemistry in any detail, but I've been doing some archive work with stuff that I've been trying to introduce to students years ago, and I found a page out of Utopia and Oblivion that happened to deal with Linus Pauling and eventually over to Van Hooft, and the fact that he got the first Nobel Prize in chemistry. And it's all about what Fuller eventually talked about in terms of 4s and the different bondings, single bonding, double bonding, etc., all the way up to quadruple bonding, which is really solid form. And then Manu talks about his background in geology. And I have an association with a colleague who was a geologist and then an educator, a teacher, classroom teacher, but he was also a gay man. and he had a great deal of difficulty teaching and staying in the closet, if you want, and eventually quit and became an advocate for the inclusiveness of sexual orientation and that sort of thing. And so then we talk about Utah. That connects me to some of the thinkings vis-a-vis things like sexual orientation. And a good colleague of mine who was a worked for us, and his wife, it was a second marriage, but she had a young two boys. One of them was a gay man in his adult life, and how they went through a whole bunch of efforts to bring together a deeper understanding of family vis-a-vis difference in their families. So it's a fascinating how all of this is sort of interconnected, and spins off of Wayne asking about the chemistry, and then getting into for me, a hugely deeper understanding of the Salt Lake City, or the Salt Lake sort of area and the flats and how that came about. But the big thing that Manu was just talking about that really hit me was, and he talked about the four, and then he talked about the importance of the tensional integrity. And it hit me all of a sudden of saying how preoccupied we often are with the four of whatever. And we understand that, but we miss the tensional integrity of whatever those four are and how they work together. And it's the tensional integrity that Fuller, I think, was all about, in terms of trying to say, it's not the things that kind of hold us together physically or maybe socially, it's the tensional integrity that has that give and take in there. And that's the, for me, that's the missing part of so much of our discussions. It's also, for me, exactly what Steve was saying, is why so many conversations outside of the kinds of things that we talk about, and as Wayne was talking about, are boring. You get tired of them very quickly. But when you get into tensional integrity talk, which is, I think, what we do all the time, it's exciting, it's dynamical, it allows us to hear opposing opinions, which really aren't opposing, but it may sound that way, and to be open to the dialogue of the tensional integrity between however many of us meet in this space or in other spaces in our lives. So it's what a interconnected sort of dynamical discussion that got kicked off by a question about what do we know about chemistry. So,
Richard, that's really interesting, because looking back, I noticed this yesterday, but I didn't put it in the same words you just did. Manu said, you're the master of social structures. That's where you've spent your life. And so if you look at that conversation I was having yesterday as a social structure between three people, or at least the possibility of one, right? So all three of us throwing ideas out there, me listening to what they're saying, and him over here saying, nothing is real. And it's just empty space. And her saying, no, it's not empty. I don't think it's empty. I believe it's something else, but not having the tools to articulate, or even the knowledge. She sensed it kind of intuitively, but she didn't really have a way of expressing what she was seeing. And my training with Bucky in tensegrity, in the jitterbug, in the views I've had of energy fluttering in and out of material existence at an incredibly rapid rate, such that it's like a flickering of frames in a movie screen that appears to be real and we experience it as real because we're inside the picture, but it really isn't from another perspective. I was able to talk to them about tensegrity for a minute and she got it. And that shifted the conversation. They left shortly after we had that conversation. As she was leaving, she said, "Oh, I love this. I could talk about this all day. This is the kind of stuff I really love. I want to come back and talk about all this." She was just bubbling over with excitement because I think she got a glimpse of something due to the concept of tensegrity that was probably new to her. So I'm seeing that too. Susan.
Yeah.
The hydrogen tablet I'm using. What is that doing in terms of bonding of say there were metals in my blood? What's going on?
So one of the things that's super fun, that technology to be able to put magnesium hydroxide into a tablet and have it dissolve in water and release the hydrogen. Some of it will be in the water. You can get some of it directly as gas coming off the surface of the water. Fabulous because it leaves you with elemental magnesium. So that's really good for you. Hydrogen as a molecule. So we talk about this different hydrogen atom, hydrogen molecule. So H2, two hydrogens together. So that first inner shell of an electron orbiting according to Bohr model physics. And I know Steve has the whole Copenhagen, stressors in there. But because each hydrogen atom has one electron, when they come together, they fill that inner orbit and it's stable, but it is the absolute smallest molecule known in the universe, according to what we understand of chemistry. And because it's so tremendously small, and because it now has a neutral charge, because each hydrogen atom would be an H plus, but together as an H2, it's neutral. So it can move through the plasma, through that intracellular fluid. It can move through the membranes, whether that be the outer membrane of your cell or the inner membrane of the nucleus or your mitochondria. It can get to all of those places. When it gets to those places and it encounters the attractive force of something that needs to either oxidize or reduce, say there's some free radicals out there, the hydrogen atom, molecule can split apart into two hydrogen atoms. One of those hydrogen atoms can glom onto the end. It'll probably take both of them to glom onto the O2, the superoxide radical, and quench it and make that neutral. And so the absolute amazing power, and I don't know when the rest of society catches up to the absolute phenomenon of molecular hydrogen as a supplement, is that it is a selective agent to quench both oxidative stress and reductive stress anywhere in the body.
Wow.
And so it is, so many things. We think we know what we're doing when we say, gosh, you need some more antioxidants. Well, you need the ability to oxidize stuff. It's built into the system. So almost everything that's happening within the body is in some sort of equilibrium, some sort of tensegrity for that individual situation, for that need. And because of that, we can do our very best to look at a situation and say, well, let's throw more of this or more of that. But when you have a substance that you can put in and say, okay, I'm popping this in because it will help the whole system, body gets to decide what it needs, where and when. And so that technology to take it and be able to put it into a tablet there's only one engineer in the US that's figured this out. So all of the hydrogen tablets that are effective come from one processing center. Otherwise, they were taking gas and bubbling it through water. And so you'd have to get like a sealed canister of the hydrogen water or in Japan, they're doing quite a bit with molecular, like just breathing hydrogen. And of course, you have to be careful to have the right concentrations of gases, because you need to, your body has need for CO2, your body has need for O2. The hydrogen is coming in there as a therapeutic, but you got to be careful. I don't know enough about using it as a gas yet. I have a whole book sitting there that I haven't gotten to, that's mostly from the Japanese research side.
Susan, are you saying that that therapy is the increase of hydrogen in your body in such a way the hydrogen reduce oxygen more than normally it would be? Is that what you said?
So it can reduce oxygen radicals or nitrogen radicals or whatever is hanging out there with a negative O2, but it could also come along and handle something that's got a plus on it as well, right? So it can go either way.
It doesn't reduce the good kind.
I'm sorry, what?
Doesn't reduce the good kind of oxygen. The H2O, only the negative.
So that you're right, because H2O is the
Oxidizing
neutral molecule.
radicals.
But then as we look at that fourth phase of water book, you start to understand that water also polarizes in different environments. And it's
When
more,
you say good kind of oxygen, there's no good kind of oxygen or bad kind of oxygen.
yeah, we need it all.
Oxygen is negatively charged. That's all.
Well,
So, and then we need for corrosion to happen, what you call oxidation is corrosion. You know, like manifest in when you have iron and you see the red corrosion coming out. That's the same stuff.
is that
For
not
corrosion to happen, that got to be exposed to it like that, and it happens. So if you want to reduce corrosion, you have to add what you call anions.
Yeah.
Ions. You know, you have to add it to reduce the negative into tending to get more of stable. Did I use the wrong word, anions?
Anions is,
Yes.
Sound
there's
like red onions.
cations and anions, positives and negatives, but
So isn't too much of the corrosive kind of oxygen an unhealthy thing?
in certain circumstances. So inside a cell, you would have a little organelle called a lysosome. So it's just got a little membrane. It's just floating. Just think of this little guy floating. And your immune system captures a bad germ. It will engulf the germ and it will fuse it with the lysosome. And the lysosome has all these oxidative enzymes in there, and it will kill the bad stuff. And then your immune cell will digest it after it's been neutralized. So there is never, and this is so nice because it kind of does get back to Bucky. Veritas is not a straight line. It's not that you're always tacking towards truth. So at different times and in different situations, you would need more oxidative issues, and other times you would need more reduced things, and sometimes you need neutral. And it's always going to be in this dynamic balance in smaller and smaller fractals all the way down. And so we oftentimes, right now we're talking more about molecular level fractals, tissue level, cellular level, and then molecular level. But, and I know Steve likes to hang out in the subatomic fractal. And it's all good. They're all happening at the same time. And it's that beautiful processional dance. So it's one of those things that some days overwhelms me, but most days delights me about physiology, is that it's hardly ever can you say something is either all good or all bad. It's always in the moment.
So is it fair to say that the presence of the hydrogen supplement is bringing about the possibility of the body functioning more efficiently in all of that balanced dance.
Right, because it can act as a buffer on either side, and the individual situation gets to select which way it goes. Yes.
Another beautiful book that Susan shared with me, The Fourth Phase of Water. This is a treatise on things we're discovering about water that we haven't known before, that are not readily visible, that make it pretty magical stuff.
Yep. That started rocking my world a few years ago.
Gerald H. Pollack is the author, if you're interested.
Up at University of Washington.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
Oh.
That was a fun rabbit hole for me. Thanks
So
for all-
Wayne, where does that get you in terms of, you went to geology and gold. Where were you heading with the hydrogen and the water and the metals?
Well, I wasn't headed there. It just came up, and I was fascinated by it, so I experimented a little bit with it. So what it was, and Manu understands this conversation completely with his hydrocarbon background. One of the difficulties about extracting things from natural structures is that they don't let go of what they're attached to very easily. Iron is a very, very important metal, and it's what most of the earth is made up of. And it grabs onto things like gold. Iron will encapsulate a molecule of gold in a little egg, and it will hold on to it for all it's worth. And that was our difficulty with that ore we were trying to refine way back when, was the iron. The iron was the problem. And if you heat it up enough to melt the iron, you can blow a bunch of this gold, you can vaporize it and blow it up the smokestack. So it's very, very touchy, and very few people have the talent to modulate temperature that intricately. And then there are the presence of other metals in the ore that affect the melting point, and it's just really difficult stuff. So when I started seeing that there were chemical processes, and particularly chemicals that did not have the side effects that the arsenic and the mercury and the rest of them do, they're nowhere on the radar. This is just basically salts and hydrogen and things like that as soon as the chemical reaction takes place, they're inert, and you can put them right back into a body of water. It's basically salt water when you're done. So that's where I'm headed. Does that answer your question? Just understanding why
Yeah.
it's happening so much easier chemically than it was with fire, with heat.
Beautiful processes to start appreciating. And I know I'm not sure if I sent you the book, The Alchemy of Air.
No, haven't seen that one.
Oh dear. So this is the story of Franz Haber and Karl Bosch. Franz Haber was a German Jew that figured out how to extract nitrogen from the air.
Okay.
And that process requires incredible heat and incredible pressure. That book is one of my very, very favorites, about trying to take something that's not typically visible and making it concrete. So nitrogen cycle. There's a whole shape to the cycle of nitrogen. You're talking right now about the cycle of gold and the cycle of hydrogen. But when you look back at the history of what people did to control nitrogen, and they did that because nitrogen was one of the essential elements for fertility in the soil. So gathering saltpeter, mining the bird islands off South America, there were wars fought about this because there were islands where the birds had pooped so much for so long that they had guano mines.
Right.
And it was more powerful than gold. And then you had people being able to extract it from some of the deserts off of the coast of South America. And when we got into the world wars, Germany is this landlocked little country. that was exhausting its own fertility, and it had to make decisions about whether to use the nitrogen it could get its hands on for munitions versus agriculture. And World War II could not have happened if Karl Bosch and Franz Haber hadn't been put together by the German government and given unlimited resources to build plants that harvested the nitrogen from the atmosphere, turned it into ammonium nitrate, and allowed both munitions and food production. And what it just gets me, you get to the end of this book and you have this kind of almost above the earth view of what's happening with nitrogen in our atmosphere, into our ground, used through people back around. When Richard Nixon started his negotiations with China, when that relationship first opened up, you know what China wanted from us?
Nitrogen.
Fertilizer plants.
Yeah.
So they wanted that's what they wanted, was that technology. It was that powerful. That was the very first thing the Chinese wanted from us. And now I'm kind of wondering why I went off in that. But it's just beautiful when you start to look at humanity, the biosphere, from each of these different perspectives. I mean, whether it's the book on salt, and looking at what humans have done around just, sodium chloride, how has that shaped the course of human history? The spice trade. So I end up looking at, I love these history books that look at interactions of our, what has shaped humans, the botany of desire, like how did these 4 plants come and shape humanity in the biosphere? So these are things that make me like totally excited, and I love the sparkling reality of being able to look from a completely different perspective. So I'll stop gushing for a while.
I've enjoyed your
Oh,
gush.
yeah, thank you.
And Steve, I can't hear you.
My goal is to remember 4 of the words you said, Susan, and try to put them together in a sentence.
Uh-oh.
That's my goal.
Just 4.
I loved it. I loved your rant. Beautiful.
Yeah, I
Here
love
we
the
go with the miracle of life.
Joe, good morning. Since there's a little bit of a lull and you haven't greeted us yet, take yourself off mute. Tell us how you're feeling and how you're enjoying this drink out of the fire hose you connected to.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's kind of like we were going a lot of different places. I'm feeling pretty good, and it's we got hit by a pretty severe storm here yesterday, so it's there's a lot of damage all over, pretty massive damage actually. Homes and everything were badly damaged, and trees are uprooted, and it's pretty remarkable, and it was all in about a course of 10 minutes. So anyway, so we're kind of dealing with a little bit of cleanup this morning, but other than that, fortunately, there wasn't too much damage here, specifically to my house, but so other than that, I'm feeling good. And yeah, my expectation today has already been kind of fulfilled in a way. Just having some of the discussions that we had, I really appreciated Susan's contribution for Tabor, is because it's a complicated guy. It's somebody that really, somebody that Bucky would have been impressed with, and how he enabled people to do more with less. But he was also instrumental in putting together a killing spree, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a very he's one of the very complex individuals that more complex individuals that I've ever come across. Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that in how we can choose a path as to which way we want to go and what we want to do with our
Yes.
talents and our creativity. And do you want to, move towards something that does something to help, preserve? There are some problems with fertilizer in general, but it helps preserve humanity. Or do you want to build something that or use your creativity that helps be a destructive force? I think that, that's always been a question, but I think it's even more so today. Given the scale of some of the weapons that we have. So anyway, it's an interesting thing. I think sometimes about the ethics of Bucky had talked about more than anything else, in his objectives and how they drove his passion. And it gave him a framework for looking at the world critically. We're covering critical path. And, we're looking at how how technology and navigation of the seas has enabled people to advance. But it's also, what do you do with that advancement, that technology, once you are able to navigate the seas and you have trade and things along those lines. So, yeah, and been thinking a little bit about entropy lately, but I'm going to hold off going on down that tangent just yet.
I'd like to sort of jump in again, and it's kind of interesting that in some ways Utah, Salt Lake, has been the center of our universe this morning, and it reminds me of when it was the center of my universe at a particular time in 1995. I had been in India for 6 months, and I was wanting to meet a colleague at the university, and we never did arrange to meet because she was traveling the world, etc. Anyway, I came home and I got invited to an International Year of the Family conference in Salt Lake City in the spring of 1995. And I was at the conference, and it was very sparsely attended. It was the end of the International Year, and Salt Lake City was sponsoring it, and had to do, of course, with the focus on family and so I was waiting in a room for a session to start, and somebody walked by me, and all I could sort of see as this woman went by me was a sari and black hair. And immediately I said, I know that person. And it turned out to be the woman that I was trying to meet in India. And we had our meeting in Salt Lake. So that was just the beginning. It was just before the Olympics, the Salt Lake City Olympics. And I'd been talking about the connection between John Denver, Bucky Fuller, and Einstein to somebody, I forget which. And so somebody said, well, John Denver's here this Saturday playing a fundraising kind of benefit. I can get you a ticket. And then another person said, I know the connection with Fuller. I know, and Einstein, I know a student of Einstein's that's living up on the mountainside just outside of the city. I can get a meeting with him if you want. On the other thing, I was looking for Bucky Dome villages that were set up in Los Angeles in the 90s, I think it was. And I thought it would be helpful for those who were suffering from a big earthquake in India the year before. And I was trying to reach these two guys. One was a street minister, and the other was an architect. And I couldn't reach them from India. I wrote them letters and everything. I'm in another session at that same conference, and there's an argument starts between the speaker and people in the audience. And so all of a sudden, I look down my row that I'm sitting in to see who's arguing from the audience. And it's two guys. And I realize it's the two guys I've been looking for. And one was a architect from Salt Lake City, and he had been a student of Bucky Fuller's, and he was there at the conference. The final thing that happened in the center of the earth in Salt Lake City, that particular moment in time, was that I went into a big auditorium, hardly anybody there, and the speaker started to speak from down below in the amphitheater. And all of a sudden I heard her use the word chaos. And I was into chaos theory at the time. And so I perked up, I looked, and the woman that was speaking was Margaret Wheatley. I'd never heard of her. I had no idea who she was. But then I discovered afterwards, she was into quantum. She was into leadership in the new sciences. And all of this happened in March of 1995 in Salt Lake City. So it must have been the center of the universe at that particular time, and certainly for me anyway. So thank you for allowing me to indulge that story, because I don't think there could be an audience anywhere in the world that would have people connected to Salt Lake and Utah in the way in which we are this morning, that I could have the opportunity to share this story, because really it's quite a personal story. But thank you for the opportunity to share it with you today, and to remind me that almost any place can be the center of the universe at a particular moment in time, and be very important to the potential integrity of our entire system, whether it's just our little group or something much bigger. But
Who was the architect, Richard?
what was his name? I'll have to think of it.
It'll come to you. Please let me know when you remember.
Yeah. As we talked this morning, it may in fact come back to me, or I'll be able to sort of do a quick search and I'll find it.
Thank you.
Because it's right on the tip of my tongue as to who it was.
It'll come to you.
It wasn't Mike Lee, was it?
No.
Mike Lee, the politician, Mike Lee?
No, I have a college buddy who, in fact, I've talked to him about this call. He's an architect, been involved in the world. He's done architectural projects around the world, in Dubai, and he did some stuff for Disneyland, and he was kind of like the sponsor. He was like the senior resident of the Wright House at BYU, and my rock and roll band cranked up in 1965, and he's been a fan for all this time. And he went to, I'm not going to get it right, but he was at Stanford or at some UC, some university, and he actually invented the game of life, and or some version of the game of life, and nobody knew what to do with it. They didn't know what to do with it in architecture. They didn't know what to do in biology, and so he just set it aside. And I've had some amazing conversations with that dude, and it would just be a miracle if he were in the guy that you were connected with, Richard. I'd fall out of my chair if that's what happened, you know.
I put a post in the chat, guys. Speaking, Steve, of architects that work all over the world. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Where'd You Go, Bernadette? starring Kate Blanchett. I love it. I love this movie. Just without a spoiler, she's a middle-aged woman who started her career in architecture with stellar results, world renowned, working out of LA, did some beautiful projects, and then had a premature child that she put her life on hold to save the life of that child, and ended up taking the whole child's growing up years to do it. So she's about 20 years out of the business. When the child's ready to go back to college, she is having a real midlife crisis, and is very antisocial and not getting along well with people around her at all. And her former colleague from architecture says to her, after she rants to him about, all of this stuff, he said, "Are you done yet?" He said, "Yeah, I hope so, because people like you have to create. And if you don't create, you become a menace to society." Said, "Your answers, you just need to get your ass back to work and create something." And that's the story of how she found herself again in midlife around her passion, and made herself relevant again, and healed her family and healed her relationship with those around her, speaking to Richard's passion, through all of that. So you may enjoy it. I hope you do. I bought a copy of it, and Mark's mother borrowed it from me and hasn't brought it back, so I guess she likes it. Except, Mark, I'm going to be in trouble. It had an F word in it. I can just imagine your mom watching a movie and that I gave her, stumbling across that word. I'm going to be in all kinds of trouble.
I think it's healthy.
Well, I'm not sure she does. I need to warn her, I guess. I didn't give her the disclaimer. Well, good stuff, guys. I hope it's as beneficial to all of you as it is to me. This, I did not like chemistry in school. Never took it, I don't think, because I hated the way the chemistry lab smelled. There were better smells in the barnyard than there were in the chemistry lab. And so I didn't take it, and was never a fan of it. But through my foray into the minerals business 15 years ago, I really started to love chemistry and geology and things. And I remember flying my airplane back and forth over this part of the country, and seeing the formations and seeing all the mines dot the mountainsides, and you get an interesting bird's eye view from an airplane. So it's just fascinating to me how alive the earth is, and how the processes are there, and how we have such a fledgling understanding of them, even in all of our modern sophistication, and the treasures that truly exist as we learn the principles. And that's what I heard Manu say earlier, was that if you learn the principles around which these things are organized, and he's talking about the 4 points of the tetrahedron and hydrocarbons, and then related it to Richard in his social structures, then we start to see patterns, and those patterns will give us insights into how we can properly use the resources of the earth and the things that are inherent in the earth for the blessing of everybody. Who was bigger than that than Bucky and John Denver?
Geez, Wayne, as you say that, I'm flashed on to Mr. Smith talking with Morpheus, saying human beings are viruses, and being disgusted. And as you talked about flying over and seeing a mine here or there, the dream mine, the relief mine down in Salem, right, with Bishop, what's his name? Shoot, I have the book down there. Anyway, and I just imagine these little holes with these little termites going in there, these little human beings extracting the stuff, and the earth is going just fine. Our bodies have a bunch of parasites and a bunch of little operations going on where life is just happening in us and around us constantly, and we're going along completely not caring about it until it gets sick, until the atom bomb goes off and it starts to affect the nature, some aspect of the planet. Usually these little viruses happen and the body takes care of them Susan was talking about, these processes. What a miracle life is.
Yeah, and I choose to see it that way as opposed to referring to any organism as a parasite. I came into my office at 3 o'clock this morning, and when I opened my computer, the screen went on. A sleeping fly decided that he was attracted to that light. And he was a big bugger, and he was really bothering me. And I really don't like to kill things. And we came to an agreement somehow. He eventually settled down, but even a fly, I really don't want to harm it if it's not necessary. And I haven't thought of why it was necessary yet. But that wasn't my point. My point was that that life is beautiful, and I think back to our time with Fred. Only 3 of you on the call knew Fred, but he was a pure scientist in his mind, a pure mathematician, an atheist, and he was just absolutely convinced that we are doomed and there is no way to turn it back. We've already passed the point of no return, and you're a fool if you're not preparing. I don't believe it. I don't buy it, because I don't think it's a matter of not knowing how to correct our mistakes yet. And could we reach that point? Of course. I mean, utopia or oblivion, that was Bucky's treatise, but I believe in the human spirit. I believe in our minds and our ability to discover whatever needs to be discovered, always and only in the nick of time to continue to thrive. We'll see if we have the character to do that. It is the integrity of the individual that is being tested, not the integrity of the termite colony, excuse me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually attended the discussion about that, about the, I don't want to say the future of humanity, but at least the potential conflicts that may exist in the world in the near future, and what needs to be done in order to avoid them. Yeah, I don't think destruction is inevitable, but I do think that a lot of work needs to be done in order to ensure that destruction doesn't occur. It's something that has to be requires us to be vigilant. That's for sure.
I agree. One of the projects I'm consulting on right now is a piece of property that was part of a drainage area, leaching of one of those mines Susan was talking about, using arsenic and things, arsenic and lead, flooded out onto this forms a part of this 40 acres, to the point that it became a Superfund site, or at least an EPA target site. So the EPA is there right now, just finishing up their remediation. And they're doing that with taxpayer money. The property owner had to pay a little bit, but down on the flat where it would look like pasture, they're saying that they're taking that down to that it was under 3,000 parts per million. So that's acceptable. Now, I don't know who decides that much poison is acceptable. I'm sure it's scientific in nature, but I think we might have a problem selling property to people whose children are going to be playing in that dirt. I wouldn't want to buy there just because it was what it was and it still exists. And so I've been exploring other avenues, and what I came across a couple of weeks ago was a group. Honestly, don't remember where the guys were. We talked for a couple hours, but they have, they're on the East Coast. They have a technology now where they introduce what they call biological bugs. These are living organisms that eat this stuff. And it's a whole lot cheaper than today's remediation methods, and a whole bunch quicker. So within a few months, you can clean up a whole site down to zero. They will eat all of it or near all of it. So you take that one thing where we could reclaim water. I know places here in Utah where there are mine shafts with beautiful mountain properties above them, but the whole water system underneath is contaminated because of the chemicals that flooded those in those early days. well, these guys could dump barrels of their bugs in there, and in a while that would be cleaned up and be completely potable water. Now we can use the land above it. So that's just a microcosm of, I think, what's possible, what is possible.
Okay,
Guys, I need to go offline for just a minute.
yeah, one of the,
Joe, is what you were thinking, seems like, because you brought up the word, where'd it go here? What was that word you mentioned a minute ago? Oh, entropy?
oh, yeah, I've been thinking about that a little bit.
Is that- Were you, because then the other comment was if things don't start to change in some other direction, that, you know, it's kind of like going in a bad direction.
Yes, I mean, the entropy question, I was just thinking about mostly in terms of like kind of recently I was just thinking about it in terms of not necessarily philosophical, but the physics behind it. And how energy is well, basically how scale of like how bonds scale solids how a scale of bonds and energy units work together, and how do I explain it? I'm trying to think of what it, because I listened to it, something about it yesterday. Basically, how does a hot object get even hotter when it's placed next to a cold one? Was the question that was actually posed in one of the videos that I was listening to. And the example was if solids were like, if you had 6,000 bonds and 8,000 energy units, the probability of the object spontaneously gaining more energy is astronomically small. That is because, and I'm reading from my notes, that is because the real world objects consist of many more particles than our model. And I'm just reading parts of it anyway. Thus, ice melts, cream blends into coffee, and tires deflate because processes result in more dispersed energy states. Anyway, and then the video said something, there's no unseen force propelling the system towards higher entropy. And that caught my attention. It's just a higher entropy states are statistically more likely. And it didn't sound to me like that would be something that Bucky would talk about, in sense that how there's the seen and unseen. And that's something that I was just thinking about in general, that everything boiled down to probability.
Gotcha.
That was just my thought. So it was something, a video I was listening to on the basics of entropy. But it didn't seem to necessarily go along with what Bucky was talking about.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, entropy is only statistically and probabilistically measured. Were you thinking along the lines of more chaos and order?
Me?
Yeah.
Just thinking about how much the more technology we have, the more people that have it, the more I'm thinking in a little bit different mindset, maybe not what just the potential of human beings is infinite, and there seems to be people that have a lot of knowledge and potential in one corner, and then a lot of other people that are losing their potential. And I just wonder what will happen as those things continue. And I didn't know if that was something that you were thinking of in regards to entropy. I think it's not, but the more technology we have, back in the day, you know, people that had power were able to use it, and they did in their own way. But these days with power, it's a whole different dynamic. And I'm just kind of curious how that's going to manifest here in the next let's just say 50 years. It kind of makes me pessimistic in that regard, but somehow things are, and they do what they need to do, and it almost doesn't matter. I mean, but at the same time it does. It just depends. I don't know. I have too many thoughts right now.
Yeah, mine are going a little bit all over the place as well.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I may say something, I was just going to say, the more complex we are, that is, the more dividing we do things, the more what we feel as stability is a stability of fractal. And all those fractals are discontinuous. So it will be more and more difficult to handle anti-entropically the environment in which we are. Because there are so many discrete, stable cases. And you cannot tell Heisenberg, you can't tell with precision their velocity and their position. There's always going to be uncertainty. And that we have to live with. I mean, the other day we were talking about, what were we talking about? Where we landed in a complex plane. And then we're talking about the nice structures and all the peripheral of stability. And we say that it's not predictable, you cannot predict it. And we oblige, in order to leave the situation, to come back to things that have been tested long time ago. That is, you have to maximize where you have control, your strength. Let's just put it between quotes. You have to do the most that you can with those. And just provision fuel for what you don't control, what can happen. Because over those things, there's nothing you can do. I mean, for example, if you are in agriculture, right? And then you have a ranch somewhere. No, not a ranch, you have a farm somewhere. And then you are cultivating the farm. Well, you can do the best that you can within the farm. But what if there is some pest that is not predicted, that you could not anticipate that happen? What do you do? Are you going to completely monoculture? Or are you going to kind of seasonally rotate your planting? Are you going to store some ammunition in terms of maybe some stuff that you don't need now? It might be, I didn't want to use the word pesticide, but it might be that you don't need now, but you know, you got to have some quantity of something. So that's the world that we live in. And a lot of people in terms of application in their lives, they completely forget and they leave. I mean, I remember this when we used to talk about network marketing. It's sales, 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 sales. But how do you hold it? Nobody taught anybody how you hold that you're accumulating. No, actually, you're not even accumulating. And it is a problem. I mean, Wayne, is it a problem or not?
Yes.
So that is, we always have to understand things, dividing, to be able to turn them, to have them, to hold them on your palm and be able to rotate them like that. You need structures. You need to know how to rotate them and see them, see different colors. But we also need to, I was going to say, to anchor part of, to be practical into, hey, how does this serve us within a certain lag of a cycle? And to me, that is where wisdom comes from.
Yeah, in response to your question in a little more depth, let's take real estate as an example, and Steve will very much relate to this, as all of you probably will, but he was on the speaking circuit at one time. So real estate gurus, I think, tend to oversimplify things. They say, buy a property and keep it for your whole life, and the tenants will pay off the property, and the tenants will do this, and the tenants will do that, and you'll be the one that reaps the wealth because you'll own that property free and clear. And all of that is true. Manu gave us a great example last week of the flat that he bought with his $15,000 bonus that is still generating for him. But what Manu didn't tell us about that story was everything that he's had to do to hold on to that and keep it prosperous in a changing environment. You know, what happens when something like COVID comes along? My son, who manages the maintenance on 60,000 homes nationwide, said that they have a couple of thousand homes where people are living in them and haven't paid rent since 2020 because they're taking full advantage of the COVID restrictions. Well, how is a landlord supposed to survive? And if you're mom and pop and that's your only property, you've got expenses against it, you might not be able to hold that through that changing environment. I think that speaks deeper to your point, Manu, that getting it's one thing, understanding how to hold on to it by apprehending and comprehending what forces are acting upon it and what your response ableness needs to be in order to adapt and make decisions that will allow you to preserve that is it's the whole conversation to me. It doesn't do a lot of good to go to all the brain damage of acquiring something, which usually takes quite a bit of effort if you can't hold it. I mean, any general does that. A lot of generals have known they could go in and take a city, but could they hold it? They can take a beachfront, but can they hold it? I mean, that's the whole talk of a battle, right?
Tension, compression, always coexisting.
Yeah. Looks like we're at wrap-up time, Steve. With
Gosh, I've had so much
seven
fun
of us
just
on, we'll
listening.
probably need the
Yeah,
20 minutes.
yeah, I guess it is. If we're all good with it, well, let's go ahead and do that. Susan, how are you feeling? And I'm so glad you were here today. We've missed you. It's obvious how much we've missed you over the last few weeks. I'm glad you put all that together and shared how you're feeling and what's your takeaway today.
Very, very sweet. I feel like this is a big part of my life to be able to get together with you folks and explore more deeply. I would love to keep seeing from some of these different perspectives and expand the way that I can see universe and then make some choices about how to move through it. I've got a whole bunch of little tangents written down to go and follow. And I will get your movie, Wayne, because in some ways I feel like heading to this part of my life where even more than just the initial emptiness, the kids really are moving away. Different stage of life for sure. So, and I want to figure out a way to make good use of that. Joe, how are you feeling and what are you taking away this morning?
I like the free flow discussion that we had. I was a little late. I apologize for that. It gave me, these are how ideas are developed, and they come spontaneously through discussion. And so I think that for me, thinking about tensegrity and how that actually applies in various circumstances, which is that Richard actually had talked about, was very helpful for me. And I have some scattered notes as well, in the sense that even as far as what we're discussing with water and molecules, a little bit. I know that you've mentioned that book in the past, Susan, and that's something that actually I need to read. One of the things that I really do appreciate is some of the discussions that we had surrounding our future and how we have choices about that future. And the Fritz Haber example is a really good one, in the sense that the directions that we choose and how we choose to use our creativity will ultimately, determine utopian or oblivion. And I think we're at that point now where there are a lot of decisions that do need to be made. I've heard just the other day, somebody was talking about their goal was to make artificial intelligence unpredictable. And I was just like, that's not a very good goal. And so I think about it from that perspective. It's really kind of thinking about Bucky's concepts and how they are not only manifest themselves in reality for creativity, but also how they help the world work for everyone. And so in that sense, I enjoy the ethics aspects of our conversations, because I think that there's that it has its, that's where Bucky's perspective, that was what drove Bucky to do what he did, ultimately, to be able to accomplish what he was accomplished. Not, the problems were certainly interesting to him, but the fact that he was working towards something and he had purpose was ultimately the thing that allowed him to do great things. So that's, and just sometimes revisiting that is helpful. And I appreciate everybody being here, and it was great to see you again, Susan. So Richard, how are you feeling? What are you taking away from today?
You're on mute, Richard. There you go.
Yeah, feeling great. Feeling very expanded as a result of the discussion, and really grateful that somehow or another Salt Lake City and Utah came into a focal point and brought me back to the memories of meeting Craig Chamberlain, because I now remember the name, and that his part in LA in setting up what was called Justiceville. It was a dome city for the homeless. It was set up in downtown LA on the parking lot of a Holiday Inn in central LA. It was self-governed and was I think financed by we were talking a little bit about oil and whatnot, by an organization, I think it was an oil company called ARCO. And it was just such a great coincidence to be able to meet him in Salt Lake City in 1995 when I did, and to be reconnected to him today and his work, and then to discover his memorial in terms of his passing 3 years ago. It just, who knows what kind of spontaneous interconnections arise out of these kinds of meetings. And they may sound random, but somehow or another, I don't think they are. But anyway, thank you. And Wayne, how about you and your feeling now, and what are you taking away from this morning?
I feel really calm as we come to the end of this session. It's been a relaxing meeting for me, but rewarding. I can't remember the term Joe used. Free flow, was it, Joe? That I like that pace as a change. I like the other, hard hitting stuff too. When we're all anxious to get to the point on some stuff and to make our points. So it's all good. Susan, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit further. I saw you blush a little bit when Steve complimented you. It really is nice to have you back. I'm sincerely, it's wonderful here. You bring something to us. I felt your passion today about the body and about the chemistry of the body. And of course, that's one of the things I love about you. I see it often. I don't know what you did. You said you were just about stir crazy, but it must have been a great vacation because you look wonderful. You look relaxed. The stress that has been hanging on you isn't visible this morning, and you look like a kid. Just all kinds of college vibe going on with you. So I think what I'm saying, and I think I can speak for everyone here, we love you and you're part of us, and we're grateful to have you back. As far as my takeaway goes, I've got a couple of them. It's the little moments during these calls when it's a word, it's a reference, it's this or it's that, and I treasure those moments because they're the ones that stick with me throughout the week and draw me to think about something in a deeper way and to perhaps research it and spend some more time on it. It feels to me, and I'm with you, Richard, that there is some guiding intelligence somewhere around us that brings these serendipitous moments together. I laugh at Salt Lake being the center of your universe this morning. It's wonderful. And you mentioned Arco. Arco was an oil company that got acquired, I think, by BP, didn't they, Manu? I think BP acquired Arco. Arco was the big dog oil company, was it Exxon? They were the big dog oil company in Alaska when I was there 10 years prior to your being in Salt Lake. I was in Alaska in the mid 80s and had a lot of friends that worked for Arco. So here we have a parking lot in LA. Arco maybe funded that parking lot dome structure. And we started out the morning with a treatise on hydrocarbon structures by somebody who knows more about it than all the rest of us ever will. He could have told Arco what to do. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful dance that we're involved in. And it's that dance that I have the faith in, that it's going to create something beautiful. I guess one of the things that life is guiding me to look at right now in a deeper level is tensegrity. And one of the big takeaways this morning for me was to see that in multiplicity, not to just look at tensegrity at a subatomic level, but to see the tensegrity in relationships. And I don't think I will ever see it the same after this morning. Richard's comments early on, how that related to my conversation yesterday. I've thought of my own family during this call. What's going on in the conversations in our family with our teenagers, particularly, as they're all so hyper focused on whatever it is their world revolves around that day. My daughter was so upset yesterday, not terribly, but growled a little bit about she had to work. Well, she has a job at a snow cone shack. She manages and they rely on her, and they usually ask her to do the 5 to 10 shift. So she closes the shop. And I told her that's a position of trust, Lexi. You understand that, right? They're trusting you to close up and count the money and and be the person that does that, that's a compliment to you. Yeah, but Dad, why'd they have to work so late on the weekend or on the holiday? Because nobody's going to be coming and buying snow cones. They're going to be watching fireworks. Well, of course, she wanted to watch fireworks. That was the whole thing of it. And so how do we hold those conversations? What's the tensegrity? Heavily relying on the integrity part of that blended word in our family and in the conversations that go on around the kitchen island and in our busy comings and goings each day. I'm going to be paying more attention to that and be more present to that. So I could go on, but I won't. Thank you, all of you, for everything that you bring to it. And these mornings become more important to me. I'm surprised. I would think they would become less important over the years. I might even get bored or you know, oh geez, I've got to do the Bucky call again, 2 hours out of my Wednesday morning. It's not that kind of a feeling at all. I woke up at 3 this morning saying, darn, I've got to wait 4 hours before I get on the Bucky call. So I want to find something to do for 4 hours. So thank you for being the people, as you have all expressed at one time or another, with whom I can have this experience. Mark, how are you feeling? What's your takeaway today?
I feel good. Gonna think about tensegrity and also think it's interesting how that correlates with relationships and the dynamic that holds everything together, and everything is constantly manifesting itself in fractal forms, whether it be molecularly or large, small, social geography. It's all somehow tied in a way that is a fractal of an idea that's manifesting in different degrees. And so I think that's interesting. I kind of have a couple topics that I feel like I would bring up that I think would be interesting to discuss. I don't know if there's what topics or what ideas should be thrown out. Is everything welcome?
Yeah, sure.
Well, you say, yeah, sure. That doesn't sound that convincing.
No, I mean it emphatically, actually. That
Okay.
nothing is
Come
off
on.
limits. We'd like it to be somewhat in flow. You know, hey,
Yeah,
let's talk
totally.
about the World's Fair in 1901. That might not be very applicable, but if you think there's a tie-in, go for it.
I mean, something is just to throw it out there, something is interesting, you know, whatever, like weather modification. I'm a bit concerned about it. Mainly think it'd be important to discuss it even together to see what anyone knows about it and to see their thoughts on it. But these are some of the things, maybe Joe, that I was thinking of too when you said some of the comments that you had about, you know, it's important to pay attention and look at things to spread awareness to change the potential that seems to be going in a weird direction. But yeah, those topics like that, just want to make sure that stuff is not unwelcome. Don't want to get people in any form of division or heightened emotions in a negative way. So yeah, that's one of the things on my mind a lot lately. Especially as, you know, we keep hearing about these phenomenons and situations that keep happening. Not that there haven't been weather phenomenons all throughout history, but starting to learn more about that. The more I learn, the more I realize they're hiding a lot of things from the public, and so it's interesting. I would be interested in discussing that with everybody. And but yeah, my mind's full. I always have so many thoughts. Love discussing and love learning, and I'm grateful for everyone here. Let's see here. Who hasn't gone?
I think it's me.
Oh, Stephen, how are you feeling in
My Manu gone?
today?
And Manu hasn't gone yet.
Manu. Manu hasn't gone, Mark.
Okay, Manu, how are you feeling and what did you get out of today?
I feel humble, I feel grateful, I feel thankful, and privileged, to be truthful. The overarching thing that I always take away is how impactful understanding principles and applying them can be. both very local to extended locality. It can be very powerful. And I came up this morning and this afternoon here, with the notion of patient awareness. Let me explain what I mean by what came to me as patient awareness, that the power of waiting in lag. You are aware, but in order to grasp, you have to choose to wait in lag, to get beside the flow of energy, that flow. And then you have a choice to stand or to yield, and that is an individual choice. So in spite of the individual being as a reed, that same individual can have a very powerful and very influential position.
Yes.
And from that, I just note down some of the things that we've been talking about that came to me that we talked about before, trying to put words in four that makes sense to me. And one what I put was lack, time, timing, and decision. Those were four things: lack, time, timing. Then I put energy flow, boundary, and space. Then there was in, out, around, and lack. And Wayne, I don't know if you know, it's Steve or Wayne, that entropy, pollution, complexity, and fractal. Entropy, or increasing entropy, second law of thermodynamics, pollution, complexity, and fractals. And then I put together the notion of tensegrity and increasing entropy, leading to ephemeralization in terms of our anti-entropic doing. The things that we think, the things that we do are changing very quickly. And we need less and less to do more and more. Or we use less and less to do more and more. Those are just, and then in comment from what Mark said, I just come to realize that we've never told the truth. The only way to know truth is with an appreciable lag.
Mhm.
Probably at least 20 years, because a generation will never tell the truth about themselves. I'm talking about collectively, they will never. So it takes the next generation to start grasping what went on and explaining in a way that makes sense. I take, for example, the case of Ray Dalio. Been screaming, telling things, writing all of these books about the big cycles and all these things, right? You could say that 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, Ray Dalio described very clearly what we live in today in the world. And he started recognizing that what he knows is very small in comparison to what he doesn't know. My universe is very small in comparison to what I don't know. So if it hasn't happened in my lifetime, by studying long cycles of a past history, it probably happened there. What lesson do we draw for that? And it will happen again. The reality of cycles. So that approach and that acknowledgement of that what I know is very small in comparison to what I don't know. And that there is nothing new that will happen that has never happened before. Put us individually in a very, very critical and important position. And education, education, education practice, practice, practice. Knowledge without practice is useless. Practice without knowledge is dangerous. So we know we need knowledge and practice. And the biggest lesson for the individual is curiosity, taking risk, and patience. If you can have those three, I think that you are in good stead to be able to grapple with the complex issues that surround us. That's my biggest takeaway. Steve, how do you feel? What do you take away? I think Steve is the last one, right?
Yes. I'm sorry, Manu, that I forgot. Usually I take notes and I'm quite organized, and I do what I can to be worthy of whatever servitude I can create in this call. And today has been so wonderful just to sit back and allow a free flow and allow everybody to share. I've learned a lot by keeping my mouth quiet, you know? Today, we kind of talked about Salt Lake City because I moved downtown here. And so I'll just go ahead and just talk about Salt Lake City for another couple of seconds here. I talked to Joe over the weekend or something, and I showed him my view out my bedroom window. And I think you guys can probably see that back there, those green little mountain things. He says, wow, you got some mountains out your window. I said, Joe, those are hills. You know, those are hills over there. And if I'm sitting here on my balcony, going around my balcony, and the mountains are over yonder, and they're like 45 minutes away. And those are as big as those hills back there, but they're 45 minutes away. That's where Snowbird is. That's where Alta is. That's where Park City's up through there and over on the other side of the mountains. But, you know, this will probably be I don't know, maybe I'll get excited about it and share again some other day, but it's just really exciting to share my new home. And
Where are you?
What's that?
Where are you approximately?
I'm at 168 North, 600 West. So
Okay.
I'm 6 blocks off of, I'm 1.5 blocks north of the main street going east and west. And I'm 6 blocks north of I'm 6 blocks north of the street going east and west. And I'm 1.5 blocks away from State Street going north and south. And I could see the state capitol right over here. When I come into my place, I see the capitol every day, but I got big buildings around here that are stopping me, and I'm only on a 3rd floor. I happen to be on the highest level of this building. But
You're
this is
West
brand
High.
new for me. What's that?
West High School area.
What?
You're not far from West High School.
Oh, aren't I? I have no freaking idea. This is like
They're
I
West
feel
Third
like
West.
I'm living in
I'm interrupting you.
Toronto.
I get the idea. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in Toronto. I mean, I have no idea where I am. It's so amazing. I'm thinking I've got to get a Google map and drive over this ramp over here. And there's the train station going down through here. I mean, I'm in like a foreign country. And so, so it's a wonderful thing. I've really enjoyed not talking and listening to everybody. It's been wonderful. I do have some great topological topics to get back to, and I'm not in charge of this. So like Mark, you know, I would check with Wayne or me or anybody on this call and just run through what you think you have, and glad to have you present without any collaboration. And yet I think collaboration is a wonderful thing. And I'm happy I'm happy to share, have you share and share what's of concern for you. And the crazy people on this call, the geniuses on this call, will provide some context to help ground the conversation, whatever it is. So I'm going to have some topology links for next week, but I'm not in charge of anything. So I love the fact that I usually just open it up. We just have a conversation. I'm thrilled and honored to be the servant here and be facilitating part of this. And I've just changed my contract with Zoom, and I no longer have unlimited storage. And so I've got to pull these conversations off within 24 hours just to make sure I have enough memory to record the next phone call. So I'm having to readjust my schedule. I can't find my pen anywhere. It's in my apartment someplace. I found my hairbrush this morning, luckily, so that I didn't come on looking like a wild
His
person.
pen, Steve?
What?
This pen?
Yeah, that pen right there. That's where it is, Wade. It's on your desk.
I've got an extra. I'll give it back to you.
Okay, I've got 6 of them in here somewhere, and I just got to find places for stuff. So I'm on a wild new adventure, and hopefully by next week, I'll be more resolved, and I'll have my internet, and I'll know what the heck I'm doing. I'm so honored to be on this call, and so blessed to have you guys in my life, you men and lady in my life. Susan, you had so much that, and to hear you go off today and share, it's been just wonderful. Because, like I said, I'm gonna remember 3 or 4. I'm gonna look at the chat and remember your book and 3 or 4 of the words you said, and I'm gonna see if I can construct a sentence with those 3 or 4 words before the week is out. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to do that. Everything you've introduced to me, Susan, about mitochondria and these little processes, and then I go out and find these videos on the internet, and then hearing all this stuff about the game of life and RNA and what the miracle proteins, what a miracle, amino acids fit. A few little things make up this whole universe. It just boggles my freaking mind. And I just really love your perspective. I love each of your perspectives. Thank you so much for sharing and being here. I'm complete.
All right,
So-
guys. Namaste, everyone. Have a great week.
All right. See y'all.
Yes.
I'm gonna push the end button. Oh, by the way, my Mike Lee guy did not know about Craig Chamberlain, my Mike Lee architect, Richard. So thank you for sharing that. And somehow I think I remember the guy. I don't know why. So I'll check in and see what happens there. Thanks, everybody.